Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Amy Leister, and I'm with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. I'm pleased to have you all here today. We are going to do a presentation on how to grow your small business with micro-internships in participation with the Small Business Development Center and the Penn State Law Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic. Back in 2019, the Chamber announced an internship program called the Small Business Internship Fund, which we would be working with small businesses and reimbursing members for partial payment to host an intern. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have modified our small business internship program to include a micro-internship component, which is a fee-based flat rate virtual internship, which Lisa's going to talk a little bit more in depth about in a minute. But I wanted to make everybody aware that this is available. We have a page set up on the Scranton Chamber's website called scrantonchamber.com/internships, where you can get additional information and you can apply for both a traditional internship as well as a micro-internship. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it can be found on the Chamber's resource page at the end of the day, along with a recording of it and any downloads that we may have that are associated with today's presentation. The last slide before we jump into the presentation is upcoming webinars. We have been hosting a series of webinars that we have been bringing to the public. They are all recorded and they can be found at the Scranton Chamber resource page as well. And we have upcoming webinar next Thursday, the 25th at 9 o'clock, which is event planning and hosting events post-COVID-19. Skills in Scranton, our business education partnership, did host a series of industry-specific roundtables. And one of the things that came out of that is how do we host a meeting, a virtual meeting, and a large event post-COVID-19 and best practices. So this webinar is going to address that. So before we jump in, I just want to introduce our speakers. We have Lisa Hall-Zielinski, who's the director of the Small Business Development Center at the University of Scranton. She's our partner for the Internship Fund. We have Gretchen Kukuchka with the Small Business Development Center as well. And then we have a guest speaker we're proud to have, which is Tom Sharba from the Penn State Law Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic. So thank you for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
We'll actually have Gretchen get started.
All right. Good morning. So I'm going to start first by telling you a little bit about the Small Business Internship Initiative. The initiative is a collaborative program that we created in 2013 at the University of Scranton Small Business Development Center. It was created to help businesses learn about, attract, and host high-value internships and to connect area small businesses with college students. Our internship opportunities are posted online, and they are shared by career development partners at more than 11 regional colleges and universities. And of course, you can see here, you can always find us at smallbusinessinternships.com. So a little bit more about the initiative. Let's take a look at how we serve small businesses with internship needs. Some examples of the roles we play include exploring the fit of an internship to the small business. Is it a job or is it an internship? Is it even viable for me to do right now in my business? Do I have time for it? And do I have projects that need completed that would literally, truly help my business grow? We provide information on local resources and partnerships. Keep in mind that we partner with the 11 local institutions to get the word out about your opportunity. And another great partnership we have here today is, of course, with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. We can also give guidance on the internship as it is in process. You may need proper help with interviewing questions or designing a work plan or a project with goals and lines around it that gets you that defined needed outcome. You may need some suggestions even for how to wrap up an internship with your intern. So let's take a look at a traditional longer length, more intensive internship. The National Association of Colleges and Employers, which is also known as NACE, defines one as a form of experiential learning with practical application and skill development in a professional setting. Your professional setting, your business. Paring that down a little bit more into a hot topic today, which is micro-internships, which is what we're talking about here. They're a bit different. Here's how we define it within the Small Business Internship Initiative. Industry leaders that you might read about, such as Parker Dewey and others, have similar definitions. For starters, a micro-internship is often task-oriented. Focus on the delivery of the product. You're supporting independent work on the student side as a small business. Time. Other than completion or a deadline, time is not necessarily a factor. Example, you're not counting the hours it takes for an intern to get that work done. There might be limited or no daily management and time tracking, such as you would do for a traditional on-site, longer-term internship. Again, it goes back to that self-guided element for the student to accomplish once the terms in the project are amply defined by you, the business. How the student gets to the end product is not key. Accomplishing the end product and receiving it, you receiving it, is the key. And finally, it's a remote or virtual opportunity for the student. So your intern may work on your project from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. every day. And the SBII, the Internship Initiative, defines it as a fixed fee. So we know that there is a need right now for project-based opportunities. We're responding to your needs and some feedback that we have received recently from some businesses about what their businesses can actually handle. You have things to get done that you just don't have time for right now. Let's look at some potential advantages. Number one, opportunity. The opportunity is designed for remote or virtual completion, eliminating that geographic or environmental issues that could arise, and it provides flexibility in light of this. General parameters, a shorter time frame, 1 or 2 projects, independent work, and limited facilitation, all of those can often be more easily managed by that business. It can fit current external and external challenges that the businesses are facing, such as right now with COVID. If you're dealing with workforce or cash flow limitations, management or owner time constraints, for example, a virtual micro-internship may be a good fit for your business. And finally, opportunities can be an independent contractor relationship, and Tom Sharbaugh will address this coming up. So, and most importantly, at the Small Business Development Center at the University of Scranton, we have always said that internships can grow your business and test drive skill all at the same time. Through a micro-internship, you may gain some quick insight on whether that student has a future role in your workforce. The highly regarded industry association, SHRM, highlights the idea of a micro-internship by noting it can be a great opportunity for those looking for creative solutions for project work. If you've ever felt like your brain was tired and your business could use some reinvigorated ideas, this idea might work well for you. And bonus, the project might lead you to your next potential hire. So let's take a quick look at who is interested in a micro-internship, possibly at your business. We recently met with career development personnel, and they have noted that they are supporting that their students take advantage of any safe virtual opportunity to build their resumes. Think about these examples. A current student who no longer has the internship or job that they were planning on this summer. Those students who have true concern about the job market, looking to bolster their experience in their resumes. Those looking for flexibility, a chance to try out doing a great job on a variety of projects. New graduates. Oftentimes, new graduates are not always thought of as interns by our small businesses and by many. However, many are job seekers looking for gig opportunities or truly just seeking to build additional experience in their market or field. So if we start to vision out a micro-internship for what your business, for your small business, I'm sorry, and what that looks like, there's two directions that I would advise that you would head in. Number one, there are some things to start thinking about. And number two, there are some questions to start asking yourself. For example, do you have one or two projects that you need completed in a short time frame for your business? 2 to 4 weeks as an example. Some micro-internships can be even shorter. Next, logistics. Terms of payment for that intern or contractor. Can you gather a business introduction, background, and mentoring that you can provide to a student? And the last one, and perhaps the most important one that we see often in our internship program, your expectations. What are they? And what might they entail as far as an internship? Next, you can ask yourself a few questions to start off. For example, is this project a reasonable fit to a skill level of a student? Can I afford an intern? Is the timing of the fit of the project right for your business? Are you up for allowing that independence path that that student might take to get the work done? That's often, a new discussion. And is hosting a 100% virtual internship acceptable by you and those within your business? I know many small businesses here today are learning to adapt to working more virtually. This experience may help you grow even your own skills. And what information, finally, can you provide to make this self-guided learning experience for that student a really great opportunity? And how can they reach you if they have questions? The SBDC can help you think this through. This is a business decision similar to others that you make each day within your business. So next, we're going to follow up with Tom. Oops.
Okay, thanks, Gretchen. I'm going to, you have to stop sharing, I think. There you go. All right, 1 second here. Okay. So thanks for asking me to join you today. I think this is an interesting idea you have to create these micro-internships where people could, students could do several even, for the summer. It seems like a great way to keep students at home if they can be introduced to local businesses. And as I listened to Gretchen's presentation, I was thinking, I work with all the SBDCs in Pennsylvania, and it'd be nice to see all of them doing this, but I'll leave that to you guys. One of the big issues with any employment situation, when you have people for a short period of time or for the summer, is whether they are an independent contractor or an employee. And so there's a lot of discussion among HR people about this issue, but beyond that, it really is a who cares and what's the big issue. So I just wanted to give you a brief background as to why it makes a difference. From an employer standpoint, it's much easier to have somebody classified as an independent contractor. All of the boxes on the pay stubs that we get online or in paper form, those all relate to employees. All those withholding requirements and record keeping requirements, those all pertain to employees, but not to independent contractors. From a money standpoint, an employer has to make contributions to Social Security and Medicare with respect to any employee, but not with respect to an independent contractor. So there's a money issue involved there too. Companies frequently have some sort of employee benefits, and if people are not employees, they're not included in that either. So in terms of health insurance and other plans that a company may have. That once again, that doesn't apply. And then I'll mention here a little bit later on, there are much fewer employment laws to deal with as well when you have independent contractors, particularly with respect to minimum wage requirements. From a worker standpoint, I have a picture there of the Uber guys, because that is being litigated all over the country as to whether they are actually independent contractors or employees. But from a worker standpoint, a lot of workers like the flexibility, and an Uber driver is a good example of that. As many of you probably know, the company takes the position that it is not an employer, it is merely a platform for putting people together. For putting, if you want to ride and there's a willing driver, they facilitate the communication between you, but they're not the employer, is their position. And from the worker standpoint, you can get up in the morning, and if it's raining, you can say, I just don't feel like it. Or if you've been out late the night before, you can just not bother. There are no set hours, and so there may be a flood of available drivers or none, because it's up to them. And one of the things I am always amazed by is I always run into people who think that if you don't get a W-2, which you only get as an employee, if you don't get a W-2, there are lots of people who think you don't have to pay tax. And that's just incredible to me, but maybe it's because I live in a world where people get W-2s and pay taxes. But people think if they don't get W-2, they don't have to pay taxes. Well, that's completely wrong. And if you get over $600, you get what's called a 1099 anyhow. But it's interesting how people have this fixation on W-2s. Even more bizarre to me is there are a lot of people, I get asked every year from people if they have to pay tax if they're paid in cash. Or perhaps they'll just remark to me in a casual conversation that it's a great job because they're paid in cash and therefore they don't have to pay taxes. And I always have an interest in this because my wife was a federal prosecutor for over 20 years. But the people don't intend to avoid taxes. They honestly believe that if it's in cash, you don't pay tax. So, and that's bizarre. From a legitimate standpoint, if you're an independent contractor, you can deduct your expenses. So if you're an Uber driver, you can deduct the expenses of your car and gas and things like that. And as an employee, you cannot. So those are some of the difference between, but the driving force typically is from an employer standpoint. You don't have to make the Social Security and Medicare contributions, and you don't have to all the hassles of record keeping. So in determining whether a worker, I always have to avoid saying employee because that sort of defines the person, but a worker, there's lots of uncertainty as to whether a particular worker is a independent contractor or an employee, and the two big departments that deal with this on the federal level, the Department of Labor and the IRS. And they have different but similar tests. But just to give you a little background here, with the Department of Labor, the reason they're all over this is because they enforce the minimum wage and overtime laws. Those are the two biggest concentrations of this issue. But if you are not an employee, you also don't have coverage of a number of other federal laws. So the laws that all the HR people are familiar with in terms of Americans with Disability Act and age discrimination and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and all those things, including OSHA, they don't apply to independent contractors. They only apply to employees. So the Department of Labor has their so-called economic realities test. And most of it relates to control. How much control does the company have over the manner and methods of getting something done? Also, the other factors they talk about are the investment of the workers. The worker provide his or her own tools and things like that. Does the worker have an opportunity for profit or loss? And what that relates to is if the worker is more efficient, or if they get more work, does their profit go up, or if they don't do those things, do they lose money? It's different than an employee. Permanency of the relationship is an important factor, and what that relates to is whether the person is hired for a project or a period of time, as opposed to you're just hired. Most employees are just hired indefinitely until they're not. So with the independent contractor, more likely you're hired to do a specific thing. You hired somebody to come to your house and put a new door on, for example. Hopefully they're not there indefinitely. They get the door done and they move on. Now, from the IRS standpoint, their focus is a bit narrower. They collect the Social Security and the Medicare taxes, and so they want to make sure an employer withholds the taxes that employee owes, plus withholds the Social Security and the Medicare tax portions. So just to give you an idea, and you probably know this, but the Social Security portion that people pay on salary up to whatever the annual limit is 6.25%. That's what an employee pays, and there's another 1.45 for Medicare. An employer pays the same amounts with respect to every employee that the employer has. If the person's an independent contractor, the employer doesn't pay any of that, but the employee actually pays what's called both sides, both the employer portion and the employee portion. So the IRS test is somewhat ridiculous. It's literally a 20-factor test. So trying to go to 20 factors is just extreme. But there's a lot of overlap with the Department of Labor in terms of control and the type of relationship. Is it a definite relationship or indefinite versus a definite period of time? I have one example here of Aggie, the website developer. So she's hired to set up a website versus doing web maintenance indefinitely. To set up a website, that's a one particular project. An independent contractor typically has multiple clients. They can go around and do websites for a number of clients as opposed to having a full-time assignment with one company. A independent contractor often can work from any location. There's no requirement to come to a company's offices, and during the last 3 months that's applied to almost everybody. But in a typical environment, an employee shows up somewhere to work. Independent contractor is usually, but not always, paid a fixed amount, like you pay so much by the week or salary. But an independent contractor typically gets a fixed amount regardless of the time devoted. So let's talk about student interns, since I know people are keenly interested in this during the summer. That's really the topic here. So there's a big issue about unpaid student interns. And I know we're dealing with paid interns here through the SBDC and Chamber of Commerce program. But if they're not paid, there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. For years, a for-profit company could hire students as so-called interns, pay them nothing, and get work done. And it was only within the last 10 years, in a shorter period, that the Department of Labor has said this doesn't make any sense, that you should be able to hire people for nothing. So there's an exemption for governmental entities and nonprofit entities. But apart from those exemptions, it's difficult to hire a student and not pay them anything. You can do it, but you have to be able to show that the employee or the student is the primary beneficiary of the experience. And that's possible, and lots of universities have supervised internships or externships where students get credit. So those types of arrangements are usually pass the test. But this is not a way to get, slave labor. Now, with paid interns, as you have here in your program, big issue is the student and employee, with the record keeping and the withholding and all that stuff, or an independent contractor. Well, if you structure the arrangement like an independent contractor, then it's likely that the student would be deemed an independent contractor. And all these situations are fact specific, so you have to look at each one. But with a student, generally, a student requires close supervision and control, almost daily supervision as to what's going on. That is a characteristic of an employee. On the other hand, what you're talking about here in this program is a project where somebody gets a fixed amount of money, they work somewhere at some time, they make those decisions, and they turn in a project. You know, maybe they built a financial model in Excel, or maybe they did something on a website. So if you can structure it as a certain project for a certain period of time with a fixed fee, it's going to be more likely that you will have independent contractor status, which is much easier for the employer than if the student would be deemed an employee. So I think it's an interesting approach you're taking with these micro-internships with project-based, and it should open up more opportunities for companies to hire these students, because it's just frankly less of a hassle if you could treat them as independent contractors. So a few conclusions here. There's a lot of uncertainty regarding this independent contractor category. You have to really look at the factors. It's difficult to have black and white decisions. One thing that I should have emphasized when I went through those factors earlier, the IRS and the Department of Labor both emphasize that no one factor is determinable. So it's not going to make the decision. They balance all the factors, and you don't have to hit all of them. Also, state and local governments sometimes have their own laws. I mean, Pennsylvania has similar independent contractor type laws, but some have more rigid. I mean, California is trying to crack down on like the Uber driver situation. So some states are particularly rigid. Pennsylvania is not, but there are state and local governments that have their own thing. If you violate this and the mischaracterization, frequently you're liable for back pay and overtime and taxes and so on. Another thing to keep in mind is if you want to assume the risk of having an intern without pay, you have to keep in mind that the student at the end of the summer or the end of the internship has an incentive to file a complaint against you. It probably is not going to do a lot for getting a letter of recommendation, but apart from that, a disgruntled student intern who was not paid has an incentive to contact the Department of Labor and say, hey, I worked all summer and I got paid nothing. And there have been a number of cases where groups of students working for companies have filed collectively with the Department of Labor complaints and gotten back pay and so on. So just one last slide here, I think maybe I have one or two, about what we do at Penn State. We have this clinic, the Entrepreneur Assistance Clinic, and we represent Pennsylvania-based startup and early stage companies all over Penn State, all over Pennsylvania. So there's no connection with Penn State that's required. We work very closely with all of the SBDCs, the Ben Franklin entities, and frankly, any economic development group that's in the state of Pennsylvania. We don't just talk about things like this, we actually do things. We have several lawyers on staff, including me, and we supervise upper level law students actually doing work. So there we have, we just passed we have represented over 1,000 clients in the last 3 years as of February. So we represent a lot of companies throughout Pennsylvania. So in addition to performing services, we do educational programs like this all over the state anytime somebody's willing to listen to us. So that's it for me.
All right, I'm going to take it from here and talk about the internship fund a little bit more that Amy mentioned earlier. So can you see my presentation okay? All right. Okay, so as Amy mentioned, we teamed up together, the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce and the Small Business Development Center at the University of Scranton. We teamed up and the Chamber launched the Small Business Internship Fund in January of 2019, setting aside funding to help match internships at small businesses. And so we've been going strong. We've had about 20 opportunities paid out to date. And it was really developed at first on in support of traditional internships, which Gretchen talked about earlier. We do still support traditional internships through this fund. And so there's a lot of details on the screen. You know, I'm just going to talk through it, but these are here for you after the fact, and we'll point you in the right direction to the website and everything too. But essentially what happens with the traditional internship is that these small businesses who are eligible can receive $500 in matching funds to support, a student internship for a total of $1,000 per student. So the student has to is required to complete 100 hours of work at a minimum of $10 an hour to be eligible. And the small business has to pay the intern wages, and this has to be done via payroll, and all the things Tom was talking about, your responsibilities as an employer do have to be done with this traditional internship. The reason being, these interns are with you for a longer period of time, usually a full semester. They are doing work that is supervised and mentored and watched very closely, and they're with you for a lot more hours than these micro-internships that we're talking about. So they do have to be employees. And
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to let you know that we lost your slide.
oh, thank you.
Sure.
Let's figure out what happened there. Is it back?
There we go. It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's something with the dual monitor. I don't know what happened there.
Yep.
So I'll just leave it alone. So if you are a small business interested, we do have certain criteria. You do have to be a member in good standing over the past year with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. We do have a limit on the number of funded internships that you're able to pursue. And you have to make sure that that student completes the hours and that you complete all the required paperwork in order to receive reimbursement. And so that's offered in more detail. I'll point you in that direction in a little bit. But one thing that we want to make clear is as we move forward with the Small Business Internship Initiative, we are going to require that small businesses who are going to participate must be able to show that they are going to meet all safety guidelines. If you're hosting an in-person internship especially, have to meet those CDC guidelines, any state requirements, any industry requirements to make sure it's a safe environment for those students. And also, you have to build in the flexibility to be prepared to shift to a virtual internship at any time. And I'm sure you can understand why, if for some reason, we don't know what's to come really. We all have our plans. And as you know, we had plans at the start of this year also that didn't quite go as planned. So we're requiring that component, and we will help walk you through that. So some of the universities locally, as well as Gretchen mentioned, we have close contact with the career development folks from 11 or 12 regional colleges and universities. Some of them are actually requiring this of their internship hosts as well, that they have to sign off to say that they will meet the safety requirements and that they can go virtual at any time. So that's something we can walk you through. As Amy mentioned, in response to COVID-19, we wanted to come up with something that was going to meet the needs of our small businesses and recognize the situation that's out there. And this is our response is the creation of these micro-internships. And so you can, if you're eligible, you can receive up to $250, which would be half the cost of a micro-internship through this program. So we have the micro-internship set up. We have a structure and like a package, so to speak. So when you sign up, we lay out all the guidelines for you. It's a $500 project, and if eligible, you can receive up to $250 reimbursed by the Chamber Fund. So, meeting criteria, as I noted before, also making sure that you are paying the students and following those independent contractor rules, if that is indeed how you're going to pay them. We have to make sure that you're not just going to use that as a method of payment and then think that the student is going to become an employee, because we don't want to see you do that and violate any guidelines. So project-based, as Gretchen said, we're not counting hours here. We're not counting time. We're not clocking people in. We're saying here is a project, and it's we have a reasonable amount of time for you to complete this project, but it's up to you to get that done, and it's going to be a flat rate of $500. So I think that's it for the funds. The specifics, like I said, we can walk you through that. Just to give you a little idea of who are the students then. If you're participating as a small business in this fund, in this initiative, what students are we looking at? And so we aim this initiative toward certain students. And those would be any residents of Lackawanna County who are currently enrolled in any college or university, right? So we're trying to serve our students that are in the county which the chamber serves. Likewise, any currently enrolled student in one of those Lackawanna County institutions. So they could be from out of the area, but they're choosing to do their education here, and therefore they can be included in this. And also, if they're a currently enrolled student of a chamber member institution, which we have shown on the screen, and those Lackawanna County schools are included in there, but so are a couple of others. And so you might be eligible even if not at an institution within the county. And then something that's new also in response to this current situation is that we recognize that our 2020 college graduates might be struggling to find jobs right now, might be unclear in terms of what to do, might be taking some time off. And so for those who live in Lackawanna County and have recently graduated from any college or university, this opportunity would be extended to them. They might want the opportunity, like Gretchen mentioned, to build their experience, build their portfolio, maybe just work on a few projects while they're trying to figure out what to do next. And so we've opened this up to them to be able to participate. So just to give you an idea, this is just a few examples that Gretchen came up with of, what does this actually look like, right? We talk about internships and micro-internships, and we're telling you to define projects, but what could those look like? So we've sort of sketched out a couple of examples. Gretchen, did you want me to cover them, or did you want to go through them?
You're welcome to.
Okay.
That's fine.
Hop in at any time.
Okay.
So we tried to look at it from a few different aspects of a business. We know marketing and PR tends to be a very sought after project or internship. That's what we see a lot of requests for. And so, one such project might be coming up with a content calendar and a way to communicate with customers, reaching out to them, letting them know that you're open or reopen or whatever you'd like to communicate to them. So that could be something that's carved out very specifically for a student intern to work on. In terms of business development, maybe you need to pursue some new leads. You want some students to do some research to help you market to new customers. So they might be able to come up with lists and contact information and do things like that. Another one might be perhaps, some of our retail stores are still exploring things like contactless payment. Some of them have gotten this underway, some of them had it before, and others are still trying to figure this out. So perhaps a student could do some research, come up with different options for your business and educate you on those if you don't have the time to collect all that information. And then finally, just another example would be maybe from a financial standpoint, maybe a finance student could go through and just do an analysis of your financials, look at what you budgeted, look at what is your actual at this time, and perhaps just provide some feedback or recommendations. We have wonderful student interns in our office that are really great at being able to take a look at things like that, perhaps identify opportunities that you might not see because you're so busy with the day-to-day operations. You might not have that ability to analyze those things and look at where there might be additional potential or ways to cut costs or make adjustments. So we wanted to lay those few out. That's not the be-all end-all list for sure, but we wanted you to have a couple of examples just so you could start to wrap your head around, what does this really look like? And so really the next step, if you're interested, the next step would be to visit the Chamber website, and the link is on the screen. It's scrantonchamber.com/internship. You can read through the employer eligibility, the guidelines, the instructions, much of which we've covered today, and you can click apply to be a business host. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, even if you're unsure, go in and apply. This is what we're here for. The Chamber and the SBDC work together. Once you submit your application, we'll talk through with you. We'll talk about whether or not you're eligible, and then the different things that you might want to pursue. And if for some reason you're not eligible for Chamber fund reimbursement, we will still work with you through the internship initiative. So there's no wrong thing to do here. If you're interested, just submit an application and we will be in touch with you. And then we can talk through some of the available options. So we do expect some of the folks that will apply might know exactly what they want to do and what the projects are, and many others, most others probably, will apply and really want to talk it through with somebody. And like I said, that's what we're here for. You don't have to have all of this figured out before coming to us. We're here to support that, and our business consultants are available to talk you through your specific business and those projects that might best benefit you. So I think unless any of the presenters have any other thoughts to add at this point, I think we can open it up for some questions if we have any. Tom, Gretchen, did you want to add anything before we do that?
No, I'm good.
I'm fine, thank you.
Hey, Lisa, thanks. At this point, there's been no questions added to the chat, but since it is such a small group, you feel free, Catherine, Kyle, if either of you want to, jump in. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. You can jump on video or put it in the chat. But if you have any questions, now's the time.
And if we don't have any questions now, that's okay. Sometimes you need a little bit of time to process all of the information. And I will just say both the Chamber and the SBDC are here for you. If you have any questions, fill out that form. We'll be in contact and we'll help answer all the questions specific to your business.
All right, Lisa, there is one question coming in. If you can see it in the chat, the question is, are the students ready to go in terms of technical capabilities and specifically in regard to website development?
Okay, so that's a great question. The way that we conduct our initiative, we really empower the business to make their own selections. So when the opportunities are posted on smallbusinessinternships.com, students have the ability to apply with a cover letter and resume, and then we send those to the business, and you're able to sort through that and make those decisions on your own. Since you're the one that's going to be paying the student, we like you to be able to make the decision as to whether or not the student is a good fit. We all know that when even two different people with the same skill, are going to have different approaches and different styles. And so we want you to find the student that's right. So some students will be equipped with that experience, and other students, may not be what you're looking for. So that piece of it, we don't place students. And the reason we don't do that in this initiative, again, is because we're here to support the small business. We want to make sure you have the best fit possible. So we don't want to do random pairing. So you'll be able to look at the resume, look at the cover letter, have conversations with that person about their experience. You could ask for samples of their work to ensure that you're getting exactly what you're looking for. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you. I think that was a really thorough answer. And Catherine said thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in here, Lisa.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think Amy's going to offer the formal closing.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. We have got 10 minutes left, so fill up your coffee before you start your next call or your next hour. Thank you for attending. Information can be provided at the scrantonchamber.com for both the internship program as well as our upcoming events. And thank you again, Tom, Lisa, Gretchen, and look forward to seeing everyone soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.